Hey everybody, it's LavenderTowne, and today we're going to talk about some taboo art cheats that are actually pretty good, starting with tracing. Tracing is very taboo, and there's a good reason for that. Tracing was often used, especially back in my day on DeviantArt, by art thieves who would literally trace other people's art and put it up as their own. Obviously not very cool. However, there are situations where tracing is totally valid. What you're seeing me do in the background here is actually roughly tracing a photo that I took myself. One of the things I love to do most is actually take pictures of the bonsai in the bonsai section of the local plant nursery. This is really cool because a bonsai is basically just like a tiny little forest, and so because you are proportionally giant, you can use like your phone and take pictures from a lot of different angles that wouldn't really be possible in a real forest without like a fancy drone. I love doing this. It's such a great way to get a lot of different dramatic angles and snaps of what appears to be a forest, and then use that to build off of. Now, admittedly, if you use this hack, you're not going to be developing your background building skills as much as you would if you were drawing it yourself. However, if you're still kind of practicing how to put a background together, doing this a couple of times should start to improve your instincts, and it forces you to really study the way that trees like enter the ground, the way that moss sits over itself, that kind of stuff. The actual act of drawing it is a type of studying. I also find it's a really great way to practice putting your characters into a scene, like how to place them, which again is its own skill. And if you feel like you're still learning all the skills of art, sometimes it's easier to take away the difficulty of one area and really focus on just one thing, i.e. placing your characters, and then work on environments, doing environment studies and that sort of thing separately. You can also use the photos you take to generate your own color palettes. Now, this is a really great way to limit yourself, especially if you're feeling overwhelmed with how many colors you have access to, essentially like infinite, in a digital program. That's one of the deceptively difficult things about working digitally. When you're working with real paint or real pencils, you're automatically limited, and it actually helps you make better, more cohesive color palettes. When you first start into digital art, it's really hard not to just sort of vomit rainbows everywhere, and sometimes that's not what you're going for. Now, as a little bonus hack, I'm going to bring into the screen here a layer technique that I like to use when I'm cleaning up some of the details on my work. So in Clip Studio Paint, this is actually a layer property thing. It's called border effect. I just use it to essentially make it easier for me to build in details in a really clean way. It just automatically adds a little black border around whatever color you put down. So if you're drawing like shoelaces, or anything really like delicate and parallel, this border effect makes it a lot easier. I am going to use it here to clean up some of the grasses and little flowers and stuff that are looking quite muddy and messy. I'm really losing track of them, and this is a great way to just go in, add stuff like these little leaves, and just little pops of colors in this very like homogeneously green territory I've created, this very mossy area. You can see me just drawing over lots of little flowers or drawing over the area of the grasses, which were getting particularly messy, and it just cleans everything up in a way that's super fast and super easy. If your digital drawing program does not have this as a layer effect, you can usually put in a brush that you either make yourself or that you find online, and I think it's really worth finding one that works for you because it can save you so much time. An even quicker thing you can do is just draw your character directly into the photo. This is a very different kind of look, so this isn't going to work for everybody's art style, but I highly recommend trying this at least once. It's really fun. Again, remember, photography itself is an art, so you probably should do this with photos that you actually own. If you really love doing this technique, but you don't love taking your own photos, there are some relatively cheap like stock photo subscriptions that would allow you to grab a lot of different really high quality photos, and they would be copyright free, so you could post your art over top of them and it would not be a problem. I've never done that myself because I really like taking photos, and a lot of the time when I would want to actually do this, it would be of nature anyway, but it is something to consider if you try this out and you're like, hey, this really works for me. One of the things that you want to keep track of if you're doing this is to try to make sure that your character does not just look stickered into the background. There's a couple different ways to make sure that that is the case. You see that color I just put over top of her. That was an eyedropper tool of the brightest thing I could find in the background, and by putting all of her flats in a multiply layer over the top of that, I make sure that nothing on her is actually brighter than the brightest point of this photograph. It just allows her to sort of blend in a lot better, and it pulls her into this color palette more naturally. I'm also erasing a couple places in the moss and the stick so that the environment is encroaching over top of the character, and that also helps integrate her better. This next hack is a big mistake fixer. So here is a panel of my future comic, and I'm circling some areas where it's a little bit muddy and the background is basically making her silhouette less distinct. This was just me messing up, honestly. If you do your color palette correctly, this shouldn't be happening too much, but luckily there's a really easy fix that actually looks really cool and atmospheric that I use all the time. So I'm making a new layer called Hard Light with the actual hard light effect, and I'm using this warm peachy tone. I'm basically just putting a big like radius, like aura behind her head because there's a window there. So the light coming in actually is like softening up and covering up some of that black line art in the background that was kind of messing with like her antlers and the too similar color of her antler and the wood up top, and it's just causing her head to kind of pop out a little bit better and causing some separation between her and the environment behind her. I use this technique all the time. It's such a cheat, but it really works well for me. Here's another example of where I used it. As you can see, it just pulls that background back and it makes the forest behind her look way dreamier. So I actually think it makes the art look better as well as making it clearer. With comics, it's really important that the reader can just glance at the panel and understand what's going on. So these types of clarity issues are actually really important and something you should keep track of. So this next hack I'm going to show you, I needed a new drawing for, so pardon me while I'm drawing this character real quick, but these are going to involve some ways to give your art a more traditional look and to do it with ease. This is something that I would love if it was possible in traditional art, but it is not really, not in such a simple way. We're going to be using the lasso tool to create a really easy hatching effect. So first I'm just drawing a nice detailed ink drawing here, but it's still looking very digital, and I want to add in some hand-drawn hatching. Now the thing that takes so long about hatching for me is not just the way that it, literally is a lot of lines you have to draw, but also making sure that the hatch lines are right where you want them. So here you can see me using the lasso tool. I'm holding down the shift key so that I can add more and more spots of selection, and I'm just carving out some areas where the shadow would fall. Now this is really quick and really easy, and this allows us to, in a really relaxed way, add in some hand-drawn hatching without having to worry about getting too messy with it because it's all enclosed in these little areas. It also allows you to do one big long stroke across all these little areas of her clothes folding rather than having to draw each section individually. So now you'll see me actually go in here and start to hatch the way I normally would. So as you can see, I can overshoot it dramatically. That also keeps the lines more even because I'm not having to be so precious about it. I can do long strokes that are easier to stabilize, and yeah, it's just that simple. I mean, obviously everyone knows the selection tool is in pretty much every digital art program, but I feel like this is a way that not everyone thinks to use it. I know for me, for whatever reason, when I was hatching, a lot of the times I was doing it in this very painstaking, laborious way without using the selection tool. So since this is something I kind of recently discovered is a fun thing to do, I thought I'd throw it in here as well. Now this next bit of advice actually has to do with the fill bucket tool. It's a tool that causes me a lot of stress but also helps me save a lot of time, so I'm always trying to learn better and better ways to use it. In this case, I've really started to realize that with particularly detailed drawings, like you see all these tiny little areas of scalloped lace and little details on her collar, that stuff is really frustrating to use the fill bucket tool on, and so oftentimes I would just use the the fill bucket tool on the biggest areas and then go in by hand and fill in these like scallops and stuff without the fill bucket tool. Nowadays what I do instead is I have a mask layer, I have my flats top layer clipping masked to the mask layer, and then between those two, all those fine little details you can literally just draw in, and all your previous work flatting will actually make it so that you can draw pretty messily and it will look perfect. I'll show you what it looks like underneath that flats top layer to show you like how quickly and how easily you can just brush in those details. Honestly, I'm so mad at myself for not realizing that this was a better way to do things. Rest assured, it is the way that I do things now. It's also great if you are having trouble with those little areas where the fill bucket tool doesn't quite reach. Like you see that blob up at her hair level, that was me just filling in a couple little pixels of white. It's really easy, it's really fast, and then when you're done you can just mash those two layers of flats together. And of course, another version of the lasso shading technique is you grab a couple areas that you want to be shaded. Again, you want to do this clipped over a mask layer so that you're just coloring directly into the silhouette of your character. This is something I always do. It's a great time-saving technique. And then you can use the gradient tool to have a nice gradient shade that goes over the entire character in all these little areas where you want it to go. This is not something I do a ton, but I do feel like this would suit some people's art styles really well, so I wanted to throw it in here, even if it doesn't look the greatest on mine. I think if you're a more like heavy renderer, using a couple different layers of this could really create quite a glossy, maybe kind of anime style quick shading technique. So yeah, I hope you guys try it out if that sounds like something that might work for you. You can just see once I've carved all these areas out that using the gradient tool really does make it look a little less flat and a little more dynamic. Light is obviously like, it's beams, you know, it's not super consistent everywhere. So this is just a slightly more natural way to use sort of big digital swaths of area of shading and making it look a little more differentiated. So these are some of my favorite recent time-saving art sheets. I hope one of these was new and helpful to you guys. Thank you so much for watching till the end, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you so much to my wonderful members and patrons, including Philip Verbicario, Celery Sticks, I'm a Potato, Prince Piplup III, Honey Kitten, Nee Nico, Novel Goblin, Loro, Dada, Lily McFarlane, Artist James, Skitten, Gold Pikachu, Clad, Songbird Galesworth, Sunshine, Whimsic, Asri Cryptid, Hoodle Doodle, River de Goblin, Raz Tarosh, Kobe Octo VTuber, Graveyard Moss, Grexius, Maddie Momo, The Midwestern Menace, CB, Lucy Amajiki, Live Live, Ravens Crow, Zocelot, T-Hill Music, Jabber Dabber Doo, Light Jewel, Kadaria, The Expressive Poker Face, Tsubaki, Cutie Pie, Ice Cream Pal, Kola, JJ Jade, and of course, Lib 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 Lib.